We hyperventilate, we get hot, we start to sweat.
In my head.
Hello everybody, if you're new here, I do mental health videos Monday through Friday, so if you want to keep your mental health in good shape and learn about mental health, do it with me. Hit subscribe and hit the bell after you hit subscribe to get notified every time that I do a new video. Tonight I'm going to be talking about something that will help with social anxiety, generalized anxiety, avoidant personality disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. So basically it can work across the board for anxiety disorders, and that is interoceptive exposure. That's a big word. We're going to dissect it. Let's go. So could this be a cure for these things, for social anxiety, for generalized anxiety, OCD, PTSD? That would be wonderful. I don't know if I would go so far to say that it's a cure, but it's certainly something that can help a lot. What do all of these have in common when it comes to symptoms? They have anxiety in common, and specifically they have anxiety about the way that we're feeling in our body, not our emotions, but our physical sensations. And this is something that interoceptive exposure therapy tries to address. Now, when we're experiencing anxiety, it's really unpleasant, especially when we have these disorders, because it kind of takes control over us and we feel like we don't know what to do and we have to escape in some way. And the typical things that we do is we hyperventilate, we get hot, we start to sweat, or we blush. We just feel like we're trapped in our body and like something outside of us is going to harm us. There's this fear that something's going to happen to us that's not a fear that's necessarily founded in what's actually happening to us right now, but it feels very real, and it feels very real because we experience these symptoms and we got to manage those symptoms. So what do we do about them? This is what we do. So here's what we do about those sensations. Interoceptive exposure therapy is a form of cognitive behavioral therapy, and the principle behind cognitive behavioral therapy is that our thoughts, our cognitions, and our behaviors and our emotions, they're all separate pieces, but they're all related, and if you change one of them, you can kind of change the system of all of them. And so when we have these sensations in our body that we're experiencing, we have thoughts about those sensations and we have feelings that come up with those sensations. And what we're aiming to do with interoceptive exposure therapy is to stop the intensity of the anxiety that we're feeling and expose ourselves to it and lessen it. So basically we're trying to train ourselves to understand that just because we're sweating, just because we're blushing, just because we're feeling short on breath, our throat feels tight, that doesn't mean that we're going to die. It doesn't mean that our life is in any danger. It just means that these are sensations that we're experiencing, and yes, they're uncomfortable. Yes, they're not pleasant to deal with, but we can go through them, and as we experience them in safe settings and we experience them in a way that allows us to comprehend this, then they start to lose some of that grip on us that makes us feel so terrified of them in the first place. Now, this form of therapy is particularly helpful for panic disorder because panic disorder is all about being afraid of feeling another panic attack and experiencing a panic attack. So if you start to get used to experiencing the things that you would experience during a panic attack, then they feel not so scary and they start to become a little bit more normalized, and you start to be able to handle them. And what would happen during this kind of a therapy is, depending on what you have difficulty with, you would do things like purposely hyperventilate with the therapist in the room, of course, to make sure that you're okay. You might suck air through a very tiny straw to also feel that same way. You might eat spicy food to make yourself sweat and blush. You might run in place to get yourself sweating, to get your heart racing. You might have a cup of coffee during the therapy to get your heart racing and to get your thoughts cycling faster than they normally would. And this is all in the interest of experiencing these things in a safe environment to minimize them. Now, there's something that's important that you need to do before you even begin to try something like this, and of course it needs to be experienced with the therapist. Let's talk about that. What you have to do before you try interoceptive therapy, of course, you need to find a therapist who actually does this and is trained to do this, but you also need to get a medical evaluation to make sure that it's safe to do these things. Because if your heart rate increases and you have a heart problem, if your breathing gets closed down as you're doing some of these exercises, if you have an actual panic attack, you may have a heart attack, whatever the situation is, you want to make sure that your body actually is okay with these extreme situations and that you're okay with handling the stress. Your body is okay with handling the stress. So a therapist can, of course, work with you to be able to set all of that up and make sure that you're okay to actually go for this therapy. Now, if you're somebody who struggles with anxiety and you have OCD, PTSD, panic disorder, any of these disorders, I have some stress reduction worksheets that are free on my Patreon page. They're not a substitute for therapy by any means, but they may help you to just get in touch with the way that you're feeling and to start to notice the anxiety. So I'll put the link above for my Patreon page, and if you want to support me in my mission of humanizing health, you can also do so over there. There's other free worksheets. If you're new here and you believe in my mission of humanizing mental health, hit subscribe and hit the bell after you hit subscribe to get notified every time that I do a video, and I'd love to hear from you. What do you think of this kind of therapy? Do you think it would help you with your particular situation? Have you been through this therapy? Leave your experience below so we can all learn from each other. And as always, thank you for being here. I'll see you around next time, everyone.